Hello, hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking time to join us today. My name is 𝗱𝗲𝗰𝗲𝗿. I lead a .NET focused development practice specializing in content management and digital experience platforms. Over the past decade, I have worked with organizations to design and scale digital solutions that align closely with the evolving business needs. A significant part of that work has involved Kentico, helping teams modernize their platforms, navigate complexity, and deliver more agile digital experiences. Today's session is centered around an important milestone. As many of you know, Kentico Experience 13 is approaching end of support, and that creates a critical decision point for organizations. This isn't just about upgrading a platform, it's about understanding the implications of that deadline, the risks of staying where you are, and more importantly, how to approach the path forward strategically. What I will walk you through today is not just what's changing, but how to think about this transition in a way that's structured, low risk, and aligned to your business goals. Let's get started. Before we before we begin, let me quickly frame what today's session is and what it is not. This is not a product demo, and it's not a deep technical walkthrough. This is an executive conversation about a fixed deadline and the decisions that comes with it. We will start with the timeline. December 31st, 2026, that's when support for Kentico Experience 13 ends. That date defines the planning window we are all working within. From there, we will look at why this matters from a business perspective. What happens when platforms continue without vendor support, particularly in terms of security, compliance, and operational risk? Then I will step back and put this into context, why this shift is happening now, and how modern platform life cycles are driving it. From there, I'll introduce Experience by Kentico and the shift the conversation from risk to opportunity. Then we will look at the approach. What I am seeing across organizations is this: the most successful teams are using this as a moment to modernize, not just upgrade. And importantly, this doesn't have to be disruptive. I'll walk you through a phased, controlled transition. We'll also look at why organizations are choosing to act now. And finally, I'll close with clear next steps. So you leave, not just informed, but with a direction. As we go through this, I would encourage you to keep one question in mind: where do we want our digital platform and our digital capability to be by 2026? Let's start with the timeline. Let me start with a simple scenario. It's January 1st, 2027. Your website is live, customers are engaging, campaigns are running on the service, everything looks normal. But something important changed the day before. On December 31st, 2026, support for Kentico Experience 13 has ended. The date is not symbolic, it's definitive. From that point on, the platform is no longer supported, which means no more updates, no security patches, no bug fixes, and no official support from Kentico. If a vulnerability is discovered, or something breaks, there is no vendor safety net to rely on. And this is where the real impact begins. Your site doesn't stop working, but the risk profile of your platform changes overnight. Security teams start flagging exceptions, compliance conversations becomes more complex. IT teams spend more time maintaining and defending instead of enabling growth and innovation. And the costs, they don't spike immediately, but they begin to increase steadily and silently. So the real question is not will our site still run after 2026? It is how much risk and how much operational distraction are we willing to accept once support is gone. That's why this date matters. And more importantly, that's why acting early gives you control rather than reacting under pressure later. Let's build on the timeline we just discussed. What typically happens after 2026 is this: risk doesn't appear all at once, it builds in layers. It usually starts with security. Once Kentico Experience 13 is no longer supported, and any newly discovered vulnerability becomes your responsibility. Security teams don't panic, but they do start logging exceptions, increasing monitoring, and flagging exposure. That's the first signal that risk is beginning to move closer to the business. From there, the conversation shifts to compliance. In regulated industries, whether that is healthcare, financial services, e-commerce, or government, running unsupported software raises immediate questions. Not always objections, but questions like, why are we still operating on a platform without vendor support? And that changes the dynamic. Audits take longer, reviews require more justification, and compliance becomes harder to defend, even if nothing has gone wrong. At the same time, technical debt continues to grow. Custom fixes start to accumulate. Simple changes take longer to implement, and over time, fewer people fully understand the platform. Innovation slows, not because teams lack ideas, but because the platform demands more effort just to stand still. Then comes the integration challenges. Browsers evolve, APIs change, third-party tools update, but what used to work seamlessly now requires workarounds. Individually, these issues seem manageable, but collectively, they introduce friction across both IT and marketing teams. Here is the key takeaway: none of these risks cause immediate failure, but together they quietly shift your organization from moving forward to holding on. So the real question is not, can we stay on Kentico 13 after 2026? It is, what does it cost us in risk, effort, and missed opportunity every month we choose to stay? That's why this matters. And more importantly, that's why timing and preparation make a meaningful difference. At this point, a fair question usually comes up. Why is this deadline happening at all? Why can't support just continue a little longer? The answer is not about policy, it's about technology reality. Kentico Experience 13 is built on older Microsoft .NET technologies, including the .NET framework. And Microsoft has now moved fully toward modern cross-platform .NET versions. In fact, support for key underlying components is already limited or ending, which means the foundation itself is no longer evolving. From that moment on, the platform underneath Kentico Experience 13 stops receiving the level of security updates and innovation it once did. Now, here is the broader context. Microsoft release cycles have accelerated significantly. Frameworks evolve faster. Support windows are shorter, and older versions lose security coverage much sooner than they used to. This creates a domino effect. When the foundation reaches end of life, everything built on top of it inherits that risk. And this puts Kentico in a very practical position. They can't responsibly provide long-term support for a platform built on an unsupported foundation, not without compromising on security, stability, and trust. And at an enterprise level, that's simply not a trade-off organizations should be asked to make. So this deadline is not arbitrary. It's the natural outcome of how modern software life cycles now work. And this leads to the bigger point. Rather than extending the life of an aging platform, Kentico has made a strategic shift forward to build a modern, future-ready platform on current technology with ongoing support built in. So when we talk about 2026, it is not just about something ending, it's about the platform and the industry moving forward. Up to this point, we have focused on why staying where you are becomes riskier over time. This is where the conversation shifts. Instead of extending an aging platform, Kentico made a deliberate decision to move forward and a decision and design a platform built for how digital experiences actually operate today. Experience by Kentico is not just an upgrade, it's a ground up rebuild on modern, fully supported .NET technology, designed to be cloud native from the start. So, what does that mean in practical terms? Yes, it delivers improvements in performance and reliability. But more importantly, it gives you a foundation that stays aligned with Microsoft lifecycle instead of constantly trying to catch up to it. The second major shift is how content is managed and delivered. With a hybrid headless architecture, content is no longer tied to a single website. It can be reused and distributed across web, mobile, campaigns, and future channels without rebuilding each time. For marketing teams, this means speed and flexibility. For IT teams, it means structure and control. The third shift is how the platform evolves. Instead of large disruptive upgrades every few years, Experience by Kentico follows an evergreen model with continuous updates that reduces upgrade risk, removes time pressure, and keeps the platform current without major migration cycles. Security is built in. The platform is aligned with Microsoft's modern security standards, supporting ongoing compliance and long-term protection. And finally, deployment. With flexible SaaS options, organizations can scale more efficiently while reducing infrastructure and operational overhead. So when we talk about moving to Experience by Kentico, this is not just about replacing something that is ending. It's about choosing a platform designed to evolve with you. So you're not having the same conversation again 2 or 3 years down the line. Let's take a moment to reframe the word migration, because for many leaders, it immediately brings to mind something time-consuming, expensive, and risky. But the organization that sees the greatest value from this transition approach it very differently. They don't see migration as a technical task. They see it as a strategic movement. It starts with planning proactively. When teams begin early, they avoid last minute pressure. Budgets become more predictable, timelines become more realistic, and decisions are made deliberately, not reactively against a deadline. The next step is defining a smart approach. What I've seen work consistently is this. First, replicate what is working today, so the business remains stable. Then, once the platform is live and trusted, evolve and innovate using the new capabilities. This removes risk while still enabling progress. Then comes leveraging the right tools, and this is where the landscape has changed significantly with tools like Kentico Migration Toolkit and increasingly AI assisted support. A large portion of content and structure can be transferred more efficiently. That reduces manual effort, shortens timelines, and lowers overall risk. And finally, maximizing return on investment. Instead of moving everything exactly as it is, many organizations use this movement to improve. That often includes a refreshed user experience, brand updates, and targeted future feature enhancements. So the business doesn't just maintain continuity, it sees visible progress. So the key takeaway is this: migration doesn't have to be disruptive. Handled correctly, it becomes a controlled, value driven step forward. And the organizations that plan early don't just move platforms, they move forward with clarity and confidence. When leaders hear the word migration, the first question is usually, how disruptive is this going to be? The most important thing is to understand moving from Kentico Experience 13 to Experience by Kentico is not a simple upgrade. It's a strategic replatform, and that distinction matters. Every successful migration starts with assessment before anything moves. Teams take time to fully understand the current environment, your content, integrations, customizations, and potential risk areas. This steps remove surprises later and gives leadership clarity before any major decisions are made. From there, the focus shifts to planning and strategy. This is where timelines, milestones, and priorities are defined. It's not guesswork. There are proven methodologies and experienced partners who have guided many organizations through this process. The goal here is predictability and control, not speed for the sake of speed. Then comes implementation. Content, functionality, and integrations are transitioned in a structured, controlled way. This is not a big bang cut over. The business continues to operate while the new platform is built, tested, and validated alongside it. And finally, value realization. Organizations begin to see tangible benefits: improved performance, stronger security, and access to modern marketing and personalization capabilities. At this stage, teams are no longer focused on maintaining the platform. They are able to move forward again. So the key takeaway is this: a well-executed re-platform don't rush. It reduces risk by design and delivers value in stages. And the organizations that approach it this way doesn't experience a disruption, they experience progress. Next, let's take a look at why more organizations are choosing to act now and what early action actually enables. At this stage, a practical question usually comes up. Are organizations actually acting on this, or are most still waiting? What we are seeing in the market is quite clear. As the 2026 deadline approaches, urgency is steadily increasing. There are still a large number of sites running on Kentico Experience 13, and with each passing quarter, both risk and operational pressure continue to build. But the more interesting insight is not just urgency, it is who is choosing to move early and why. Early adopters are not simply upgrading to stay compliant, they are gaining a competitive advantage. Development teams are operating more efficiently. Marketing teams are launching faster, more personalized experiences. And customers are seeing noticeably improved digital interactions. There is also a clear financial dimension driving these decisions. Organizations that act early are avoiding emergency migrations, compliance related penalties, and the premium costs that typically come with last minute implementations. In other words, they are choosing cost avoidance through planning instead of cost control under pressure. And then there is the long-term perspective. Leaders are not just solving for 2026. They are future-proofing their digital foundation on a platform designed to evolve continuously rather than become outdated over time. So the key takeaway is this: the organizations moving now are not reacting. They are positioning themselves ahead of the curve. And in digital experience, timing often becomes the difference between keeping up and leading. Next, let's look at what your organizations can do now to take control of both the timeline and the outcome. At this point, the question usually shifts from what should we do to where do we start? The good news is there is a clear low risk path forward. The first step is gaining clarity through an audit. This is not just about making decisions yet, it's about fully understanding your current Kentico environment. What is customized, what is integrated, and where potential risks or complexities exist. Because once you have that clarity, everything that follows becomes more predictable. The second step is engaging the right expertise. What I have seen consistently is that successful organizations don't approach this alone. They work with experienced teams to define a roadmap tailored to their business goals, timelines, and budgets, not a generic one size fits all plan. The third step is starting early. And starting early is not about moving faster, it's about moving with control. It creates space for proper testing, reduces pressure from fixed deadlines, and allows teams to begin realizing value sooner. And ultimately, this leads to what leaders care about most: maintaining a competitive edge. Modern digital experiences demand speed, security, and scalability. This transition ensures your platform supports the growth rather than holding it back. So the key takeaway is this: you don't need to make every decision today, but taking the first step now gives you options, control, and confidence. And with that, let's close with one final thought around readiness, timing, and leadership. Let me bring this together. Throughout this conversation, one theme has been consistent. The deadline is real, but the decision is still very much in your control. The timeline is fixed. Kentico Experience 13 support ends on December 31st, 2026, but that date is not there to create pressure. It defines the window you have to plan deliberately rather than react under constraint later. The second point is about direction. Moving to Experience by Kentico is not just about avoiding risk. It's about positioning your digital platform for security, continuous innovation, and scalable growth. So it actively supports your business ambitions instead of limiting them. And ultimately, this comes down to leadership. The organizations that succeed in this transition don't rush. They plan strategically, they migrate intelligently, and they move forward with clarity and confidence. So, here is the key takeaway I would like to leave you with. You don't need to make a final decision today, but choosing to start by accessing your current state, planning your approach, and exploring your options puts you firmly in control of the outcome. That's how you protect the business, and that's how you unlock what comes next. That brings us to the end of the session. I would like to open it up for questions. If there is anything we discussed today, whether it's around the timeline, migration approach, or how this might apply specifically to your organization, I'm happy to go deeper. What I would suggest is feel free to share your questions in the chat, and I would like to take them one by one. And just to say, many of the most valuable discussions usually come out of this part of the session because every organization's starting point is different, and the right approach often depends on those specifics. If your question is more specific to your environment or use case, I'm also happy to take that offline and continue the conversation in more detail. If there are no further questions, I'll just leave you with this. The earlier you start exploring your options, the more control you'll retain. And we are happy to support that conversation whenever you are ready. Thank you.